The guest code he swore was for the dog walker, the night our door told the truth. At 9:31 p.m., our front door told the truth and forgot to use its inside voice. Lock event, guest code for used, the notification announced on my phone, cheerful as a concierge who knows your alias. A thumbnail from the doorbell camera bloomed under the text, a shoulder in a dark coat, a hand with careful nails, the corner of a tote bag printed with a tiny gold logo I recognized from the flower shop on Rue des Filles du Calvaire. The time stamp sat there like a verdict learning to walk. He'd left at 8 in the jacket that flatters him even when mirrors get evangelical. Wrap toast, he'd said, 2 words that make celebration sound like minutes in a calendar. Then notes with Armin. Don't wait. Armin is sound. He carries microphones like small animals that might bite and listens as if air were a confidant with tenure. The cinnamon thing in the oven pretended to be a plan. The apartment's light climbed the wall in tidy squares and refused to narrate me. Guest code 4. He'd set it up a month ago for the dog walker. Except we don't own a dog. We own a plant that thinks about dying for attention and a set of mugs with chipped mouths. And we own our silence, which was doing laps across the living room when the door spoke. The thumbnail expanded with a pinch. The camera had caught a profile that wasn't decisive but wasn't wrong. Short hair tucked behind an ear. A scarf that knew it was more expensive than everyone in the building. The tote swung in the bottom of the frame like a punctuation mark with ambition. The door had opened, and the video cut to our hallway. Shoes lined up like obedient sentences. The throw rug with its stubborn corner refused to lie flat, the line of light under the bedroom door. I didn't text him. I put the cinnamon thing on a cooling rack and told it there are times sweetness should keep to itself. I grabbed my jacket, the quiet one that knows how to be the outline of a decision, and walked home to our home as if I might meet myself there and have to explain everything. Our building at night smells like laundry doing moral arithmetic. The elevator gave me the mirror and spelled my name backward. I practiced a face I could afford. At the door, I put my ear to the wood. I could hear our place not being empty. There was the hush of people who are trying to be responsible to fiction. I unlocked the door with my own code because there are measures and then there is theater. The hallway greeted me with lemon and the smallest breath of perfume that thought it was innocent. Down the corridor, in the kitchen light we've always called kind, I found 2 mugs, steam scribbling its short-lived letter to the ceiling. Flowers sat on the counter making a case for beauty as a policy. No note, no wrapper, no receipt. They were in the bedroom. I knew because the quiet wasn't the kind we have when we're tired. It was the kind you get when decisions lean against decisions and ask whether they could borrow a cigarette. I stood in the doorway because I dislike interrupting scripts without checking who wrote them. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with his shirt open 1 notch beyond daylight, jacket on the chair, mouth set to the shape of a man who has rehearsed sincerity. Armin stood near the window, palms flat to the sill, looking at the street the way sound people do when they're mapping echo more than view. "Noah," he said, my name with the softness of a receipt. "Guest code 4 says hello," I said, because humor is the leash I use to keep panic from bolting. I held up the screen. The doorbell still frame pretended to be a witness with a tiny badge. Armin didn't apologize. He did the competent thing. He turned from the window with his hands visible, stepped once toward the hallway, and then stopped. "I can give you the room," he said. Logistics, not drama. He didn't touch my partner. He didn't touch me. He looked at the flowers as if they were a line of dialogue he hadn't approved. "Not here," my partner said, eyes flicking to the camera puck in the corner. The rental's relic from a landlord who thinks security is decor. He tipped his head toward the laundry balcony, the little space where the city breathes up at us through the metal grills. There's air. We stepped out into the square that pretends to be a balcony. The night picked a temperature and stuck to it. Streetlight wrote itself across his collarbone with unnecessary clarity. The vent hummed the pitch old buildings choose when they've already watched better men negotiate worse nights. From inside, I heard the gentle domestic theater of a faucet turned on and off, a door closing with ethics, Armin exiting the scene. "I lied when I left," he said. He doesn't waste adjectives when he intends to be correct. Rap happened. People used their best grammar on goodbye. I told myself I wanted 30 minutes where being interesting didn't have to pass inspection. "Armin," I said, "because names are handles and I like my hands full when the floor tilts." He nodded. The city kept still with professional courtesy. "Are you sleeping with him?" The question is a cliff. There isn't a scenic route. You count to one and make your mouth earn its keep. "Not yet," he said, clean, immediate. Then lower, the honesty that knows exactly which muscle wants to bruise. "I brought my mouth." Air narrowed. The laundry grill wrote small shadows over his ribs where the shirt had decided to volunteer. I lifted 2 fingers to the inside of his wrist where men keep their apologies and felt his pulse write my name there without permission. His eyes closed like doors that expect hands. At the small of his back, where his body keeps its best arguments, heat had already put its down payment, and my palm remembered the route. "You like wanting that proves something kindness can't," I said. "I didn't make it cruel. Cruelty is lazy precision. You treat intimacy like a sport and honesty like off-season training." "You like to coach," he said, mouth recognizing better rooms. "Which is unfair and also why we're not 2 neat biographies pretending to share a bed." "What do you want?" I asked. Now not the apology you drafted for daylight. He stepped into the inch that becomes a lie if you respect it too long. Heat crossed cotton like a fact you don't argue with. He spoke close enough that punctuation found my lower lip. "I want to go home," he said. "I want you to want me where our towels remember us and desire doesn't require guest codes." Inside, a cupboard clicked shut in the decided way that means someone chose not to stay. The building's hum kept time for nobody. I kissed him. Not hunger first. Relief. Relief is the appetite you can escort past strangers without deputizing anybody to judge it. He leaned in like a debt that finally liked its math. He made the low sound he never manages on cue, the one that persuades me our kitchen is holy. I stopped before the balcony could pretend to be a witness. He kept his forehead near mine because punctuation beats grammar when the wind is listening. We went back in. The bedroom mirror wrote our names backward and didn't ask to be the audience. Armin had become absence with admirable tact. On the counter next to the flowers a receipt had appeared, 2 bouquets, ranunculus/smoke rose paid. No message, just numbers doing their decent, boring work. We didn't throw the flowers away. We put them in water because beauty is not the criminal here. We ate the cinnamon thing with our fingers because forks would have lied. He leaned against the drawer that sticks, the posture that means he's willing to be moved and wants me to be precise about where. I slid my palm under his shirt and found heat like an address that still prints both our names on the mail. He tipped into me, gratitude making him heavy and accurate. We were careful in bed, not the kind of careful that kills heat, the kind that knows where to fold it, how to keep a room from becoming evidence. He knows where to set his hand on my ribs so the rest of me turns without issuing a press release. I know where his shoulder hides when it doesn't want to confess, and how to coax it into telling the truth with weight and breath and a mouth that has stopped trying to rescue him and still wants him. I won't diagram it. I'll tell you the room remembered to breathe, and morning forgave us because it had other work. We slept like people who aren't finished. Light shouldered the blinds with the authority of a suggestion. He made coffee the way he does when he wants me to listen. I opened the window and let the day put its hands on my face. The lock app lived between us on the table like a witness who didn't understand jurisdiction. Guest code 4 blinked innocently, its little label still dog walker. He started with small truths because small truths keep larger ones upright. The notes had run long. The quiet of our place had felt like a room he could borrow for courage. Armin's attention had the grammar he wanted to try on. Then he ran out of script and said the part I could keep. He said he is tired of being interesting for a living, tired of being curated, captioned, archived. He said he wanted to be wanted like teenagers are, stupid, earnest, badly lit, forgiven in advance. He said he imagined my mouth more than once by the laundry grill and hated the math. He said he was sorry like a man who knows sorry is a tool, not an eraser. I didn't forgive him at the table. Forgiveness is a daylight animal and morning's charge. I told him to put on the coat that doesn't belong to narratives and walk with me to the canal where water lies about Paris, and we let it. We sat on the bench we claim when we're trying to be correct. Pigeons performed competence. A runner's breath taught our bodies cadence we could afford. He hooked his thumb in my pocket like humility. I let him. 2 afternoons later, I met Armin in a lobby that smells like lemon and ambition, the city's favorite lie when it wants to look clean. He gave me the nod men use when they've chosen to be furniture on purpose. He didn't apologize and I didn't deputize. We stood by a bulletin board where strangers ask for Pilates partners and miracles. I'm not a hero, he said without preface. I'm a man who knows feedback when a room gives it. Your place said stop. I stopped. Did you kiss him? I asked. Pride misplaced the volume knob on my voice. It came out quieter than my jaw would have liked. He shook his head. He kissed me once, he said. I told him the sentence he was trying to say belongs in your kitchen, not on my breath. He looked at me as if I were an instrument he intended to tune before leaving. You don't need my testimony, but if it helps, no, not because I'm better than either of you, because I like the version of him that goes home. Home is a word that requires maintenance. That night we sat at our table and audited the small lies. Why the code had a number instead of a name, how flower receipts end up folded inside tote bags, when the sound of our building becomes a lullaby instead of a jury. We made boring plans. Delete guest code 4, rename the backup key for the neighbor who waters the plant when we travel, decide that whatever thrill felt urgent at 9:30 is a cheap muse compared to the story we pay for every morning. It didn't end tidy. It never does. A week later, the lock history showed a failed attempt at 11:06 p.m. Code entered, incorrect, and my stomach did the small gymnastics of a man preparing to be reasonable and still being human. He looked at the log, then at me, then at the door like a person listening to a child practicing scales. Armin's assistant, probably, he said. I told him I changed it. He picked up his phone, called, and said the words I needed more than beauty. No more borrowing. This address belongs to my life. We keep the flowers until they learn the vocabulary of water and stop trying. When they lean, he trims the stems and I rinse the vase and we call it mercy. On certain nights when the city forgets to be clever, his mouth finds mine with the urgency that belongs to thunderstorms and the patience that belongs to laundry. We stay just on the lawful side of the line, because good heat doesn't need choreography to be true. When it's done with us, when we are done with it, he slides his hand to the heat at the small of my back and rests there like a page that always knew how to end. If the lock ever speaks again at 9:31 p.m., if another guest code tries to volunteer a story where we live, I know the script we intend to prefer. I'll look at him and he'll look at me and we'll decide, quietly, domestically, with the stubborn mercy of people who keep choosing, to side with our kitchen over the skyline, with our tired mugs over someone else's linen, with this particular door learning, again and again, to open from the inside. Two more things happened, because lives keep their own encore. First, I changed the code names. No more anodyne numbers pretending innocence. The neighbor's access now reads Veronique Plant, and his mother's emergency entry says MAMAN soup. His own code I renamed with handwriting, Eli Home. He rolled his eyes but smiled the kind of smile that moves furniture in a room without making a sound. Second, we built a new rule. If one of us wants 30 minutes of attention that isn't from the other, we call it what it is, a craving, not a crisis. We take a walk to the corner where the baker sells the meanest eclairs in Paris and we talk like adolescents with dictionaries. It isn't romantic. It's better. It's maintenance. It's oil on the hinge that keeps the door from learning to shout. And the door, it still sends us neat little messages in fonts that know nothing about love. I don't trust them. I trust the square of light at 4 when it climbs our wall like an idea that finally put on shoes. I trust the heat under his shirt at the small of his back when my hand remembers its job. I trust that if any device in this apartment tries again to narrate us, we'll do what we did the night guest code 4 remembered its manners. Find air, choose kissing over theater, walk each other home with my palm resting on the part of him that knows the address, and keep teaching this door, gentle, stubborn, local, to open from the inside.